So for any of you guys that have been here for a few months at least and know about this truck being on the channel and are wondering why I haven't really touched it in the last 2-3 months, that's because I'm in Canada and we have winter. And so come October, we have snow on the ground and it gets cold. And then that's when we put our toys into hibernation. So this shop pretty much turns into storage. As you can see, there's no insulation, meaning there's no heat in here. And it's not fully wired in either. I was just running an extension cord to make the lights work in here. So this is all just storage right now. As you can see, everything's under covers. We got the garden tractor back there. So this thing's kind of just been sitting here in a non-heated, non-lit shop. And so when it gets to, you know, -10, -20 degrees Celsius in here, it's not really good conditions to work in. Not only is it uncomfortable, just you never know when you might break a piece of plastic or piece of rubber, right? Nothing's flexible in that kind of cold. But the weather has been lighting up recently, so I figured it's a good time to actually get a little bit of work done. Now, about a year ago, I redid the front suspension on the driver's side of this thing. Did new ball joints, rebuilt the hub. It has new brakes, so I didn't really touch the brakes. New wheel bearings, greased it all up, and a new U-joint as well. And I never did the passenger side, so now I'm actually going to jump into the passenger side. I have the wheel off. And then I'm going to be taking this hub off with the rotor, the caliper, all that. And then I'll have to pull the axle out and pull off the spindle from the axle and then pull the 2 ball joints out. So I'm gonna see if I can remember how to do this. So I have the actual hub and axle and rotor and everything off of it. Basically you start with that turn knob on the hub. You have torque screws, you pull that off, then there's a big snap ring on the inside of there, as well as a snap ring right on the very end of the shaft. And then this will come out, and then that will come out. And then you're left with these big hub nuts, and then you have this special socket. So you get the first one off, which is tight, and then you have a washer, and then you have the back one, which is usually kind of loose because that just sets your bearing preload. So then once that's off, your whole, well, and assuming your caliper's off, your whole rotor and hub and everything will slide out, as well as your bearings. Then you have this, well, the backing plate. There's the 6 nuts on here, the backing plate comes off, and then this comes off. And then your whole axle slides out of the diff. There's nothing inside the diff you have to unhook, any C-clips or anything, you just pull this straight out. And then you're left with this. So now really, the only disassembly left I need to do is just get the steering linkage off, and then upper and lower ball joints. Now those are a little bit tricky because the whole spindle has to drop like this, which means you have to free up both this joint and this joint kind of at the same time for it all to drop. So it's going to be a lot of beating and a lot of hammering. So I will I'll try and see how far I get. So that was actually really easy. I got this off real quick, and then this one, pulled it off completely. 1 1/8" wrench is the one that takes. This one was bigger, just use a crescent wrench. Pulled it off, but then I just left it on there, a few threads. And then I actually just took my hammer and beat on it straight down like 3 or 4 times, and then surprisingly it all just came down, and then it didn't fall completely off because I left this nut on the top here. But now I'm starting to remember how this works. Now, these ones, there's a threaded insert, or well, the casting itself is threaded, and then you have this piece in here, which is your taper for the ball joint to go in. And it's got these 4 notches, and I believe there's a special socket for it. So when you tighten this upper ball joint, you're supposed to torque this ring first, and then you tighten the nut down, I believe. And then that helps set your tightness, I guess. I don't know what the right word is for it, but yeah, I know we made some sort of socket to do this last time, but I'm thinking I might actually try and find the correct tool to do it. I'll do a little bit of research and see what I can find for that. So I have new bearings and races, both inner and outer, for this front end. So they come, you have your race, and this is pounded into this rotor, and then you have your bearing that just sits in here. I was planning on changing races as well, but I forgot how much of a pain that was going to be. And judging by the way these things look, they actually don't look bad. There's no major scoring or pitting or anything like that. Not even really any discoloration. So I'm gonna say these have been lubricated pretty well their whole life. So rather than potentially messing something up, I don't think I'm actually going to change the races. I'm just gonna go ahead and change the bearings. Now, most people would use a conventional bearing packer to pack these. So obviously you're not going to put them in dry, but I like to do it the old-fashioned way. So this is just Castrol high temp multi-purpose grease. I don't know, this is what they suggested at the auto parts store. So basically you just grab a whole bunch of it, you stick it in your hand, the palm of your other hand, and then you take the bearing, if I can do this right, you kind of flatten it out. You kind of just have to like keep pushing down into the palm of your hand, taking a little bit more grease every time you do it, until You just kind of work your way around the bearing until you can see on this end, right up here, it's starting to come out between the two pieces of the bearing and in between the rollers. So you know you have grease all the way up inside the rollers. So you just got to keep doing that and work your way around the bearing until you have it filled 100% with grease. Yes, it's probably messier this way, but I don't mind doing it because I know it's 100% greased. And the same with if you were reusing an old bearing. The process is the same, except when you're doing this, you're gonna be pushing out the old dirty grease. So basically you would just keep doing this until you start seeing clean new grease coming out between the rollers. Your hands do kind of get sore when you're doing this. There, and I think, scoop that all out. I think that's pretty much the whole inside of this should be fully greased. Okay, so that is my inner. So just go ahead and stick that back in there. Okay, so now, gotta make sure you remember to put that bearing in before you put this seal on. Otherwise, you're gonna be wrecking the seal, trying to take it out so you can put the bearing in that you forgot. So here I have all the, I think it's all the parts that I need to put this all back together now. We have changed the bearing in the spindle. Commonly forgotten part, so I changed that bearing in there. The knuckle got 2 new ball joints, obviously, and they are greased. As you saw, we did inner wheel bearing and this inner axle seal, and then when I go to put this on, I will put in the new outer bearing. And then we have a brand new Moog U-joint in here with a new, I guess this is more of a dust seal than anything. And then there's another little seal right here. Change that one as well. So pretty much everything has been touched and rebuilt and should be ready to go. It'll all be getting brand new grease on the spindle for the bearings to ride on. And yeah, I think should be ready to put this all back together now. So I know the lighting here isn't the greatest, but I'm gonna try and explain the way I did this. So I looked up the actual original service manual specifications for these things. So you torque the lower ball joint. It is 80 foot-pounds. Then you have that adjusting sleeve in the upper ball joint. You can't see it now. You torque that to 50 foot-pounds. I don't have the special socket in here anymore, but I would show you. And then you torque this upper ball joint nut to 100 foot-pounds. So that should set the preload on those ball joints, and then you should be good to go there. Then just put your cotter plate in on the top. The bottom one is a lock nut. Then once I had that, slid the axle in, then put this spindle on, as well as this dust shield, and then I just tightened those. I didn't torque them really. Just make sure they're good and tight, and then put the tie rod back on over there. So next, I'm going to go ahead, grease up this spindle, and then I can put this rotor on. And then once that's on, I'll pack the outer bearing, slide that on, and then here's my nuts, the 2 nuts in the locking washer. Those need to go on, and then set the tightness of the hub or the bearing, however you want to say it. I'll have to do that, torque the outer nut, and then I can put the hub back in. that's gonna do it for today's video. I would have liked for this to be a little bit more in depth, but because of the circumstances and it being so cold in there, I just wanted to get it over with, so I just set it on the time lapse. Hopefully it helped a little bit, and I know that there's better resources out there, either on the internet or here on YouTube, that explain it a lot better than I can, as well as even old Haynes service manuals. That's what actually I was using for torque specifications and different procedures, like that torquing procedure, how you have to do the lower before the upper, and you have to get that sleeve tightened as well. So yeah, there's a lot better resources than just me. So hopefully, maybe if you were stuck on something, maybe this helped you out. Or maybe you're just curious how these work. So happy to get done a little bit more content on the K10. I have a powder coating video coming up next, which is also going to be regarding to the K10, so you don't want to miss that either. Be sure to subscribe, because that helps a ton. I actually looked and 96% of my views aren't subscribed, so please subscribe. It really makes a huge difference. As well as liking and commenting, always a huge help. I try to reply to every comment. So with that being said, we're gonna see you guys in the next one.